Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. So before we start the actual Bhagavad Gita, before we start the first chapter, let us get into something called the Gita Mahatmya. So before we are reading this, before we dive into this great literature, so let us understand the value of this great scripture. So only when we understand the importance of something, we will really value ourselves, the time that we are spending in understanding Gita, and we will be able to appreciate the Gita in the right mood. So these are beautiful set of verses called the Gita Mahatmya, written by Adi Shankaracharya. So Mahatmya means the glories of Bhagavad Gita. So what is the result of reading Bhagavad Gita? So because we are going to start this series of classes systematically, chapter wise, based on the Gita. So let us spend some time understanding the glories of this great literature. So you all can repeat along with me. This is Adi Shankaracharya's Gita Mahatmya. So, Gita Astram Idam Punya Ya Prayata Puman Vishnu Padam Avapnoti Bhaya Shokadi Varjita. So, just one second. Yeah. So, Adi Shankaracharya says, Gita Shastram Idam Punyam Ya Pate Payata Puman Vishnu Padam Avapnoti Bhaya Shokadi Varjita. One who with a regulated mind recites with devotion this Bhagavad Gita scripture, which is the bestower of all virtue, will attain the holy abode of Vaikuntha, the residence of Lord Vishnu, which is free from mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation. So basically, Shankaracharya is explaining here that anyone who reads Gita with a regulated mind and recites the scripture, such a person will attain the abode of Vaikuntha. Vishnu Padam Avapnoti Bhaya Shokadi Anavritam. So it says that such a person will attain the abode of Lord Vishnu, which is free from fear and lamentation. This is the next sloka where Shankaracharya is saying, Gita Dhyayana Shilasya Pranayamana Parasya Cha Naiva Shanti Hi Papani Purva Janma Kritani Cha. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, all reactions to his past misdeeds will not act upon him. Gita Dhyayana Shilasya. That means one has to read Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness. Parayama Parasya. That means if someone reads Gita very sincerely and seriously, just like we study the various other books, college books like that. So in the same way, if we can studying Gita with all sincerity and seriousness, just by doing this, Naiva Shanti Hi Papani Purva Janma Kritani Cha. Just by doing this, all the past misdeeds, all one's reactions will be washed away. This is another beautiful verse. Maline Mochana Pumsam Jala Snanam Dine Dine Sakrit Gita Mritam Snanam Samsara Malanashanam. Just like we take bath every day in the morning, right? Jala Snanam Dine Dine. Just like we take bath every day in the morning. Previously, people used to take bath in Ganges water, in the sacred water of Ganga. Similarly, if one takes bath in the water of Bhagavad Gita, Sakrit Gita Mritam Snanam Samsara Malanashanam. So one has to take bath every day to become pure. One has to take repeated bath in the Ganga. But then it says that even if one takes bath understands this message of Gita and bathes one consciousness and intelligence with the wisdom of Gita, then all the dirt, samsara malanashanam, all the dirt of one's heart will disappear. This is another beautiful verse. Gita su Gita kartavya kim manye shastra vistare ya swayam padmanabhasya mukha padma vinishrita. So it says, because if someone reads the Bhagavad Gita very attentively and regularly, there is no need to read any other scriptures. Kim manye shastra vistare. What is the need to read any other scripture? Why? What is the speciality of Gita? Gita is enough, sufficient. Why? Mukha Padma Vinishrita. Yes, Swayam Padmanabhasya Mukha Padma Vinishrita. Because it is coming directly from the lotus mouth of Padmanabh, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because it is coming directly from the mouth of the Supreme Lord Krishna, this one book is sufficient. There is no need to read any other scripture. Bharatamrita Sarvasam Vishnu Vaktara Vinishritam Gita Gango Dakam Pitva Punarjanmanya Vidyate. By drinking the Ganges water of the Gita, which is the essence of the Mahabharata, coming out from the lotus mouth of Lord Vishnu, one will never take birth on this material world again. Gita Gango Dakam Pitva Punarjanmanya Vidyate. Just by hearing the wisdom of the Gita, Krishna assures us that one will not take birth again. This is another beautiful verse. Sarvo Punishado Gavo Dogda Gopala Nandana Partha Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gita Mritam Mahat. All the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milkman is Krishna. So if you compare all the Upanishads and all the Vedic literatures to a cow, so to milk, what is the essence of the cow? The milk. So that milk is compared to the Bhagavad Gita. The essence of the Vedic literatures, which is like a cow, that essence is Bhagavad Gita. To get milk from a cow, you need a cowherd and you need a calf. So who is that cowherd? Krishna is milking the cow of the Vedas. He's milking all the Upanishads. And Arjuna is that calf. So Arjuna is that medium through which milk is received. This pure nectarian milk of Gita is received for all of us. So this is one more beautiful verse. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantas Tasya Namani Yani Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So Shankaracharya is saying here, let there be only one scripture for the whole world. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam. That is the Bhagavad Gita, spoken by the son of Devaki. Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva. Let there be only one God, that is the son of Devaki, Krishna. Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Yani. And let there be only one mantra, the chanting of the names of Krishna. Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. And let there be only one work, that is service to Krishna. So in this way, this entire world is looking for that united nations where everyone can come together. So this is our understanding of how the entire world can come together. If everyone understands this wisdom of Gita and appreciates this wisdom, this world can definitely be a better place. So with this mood of understanding the glory of this great scripture, how by reading Gita one is completely gets purified of all one's impurities, how by reading and studying the Gita well, one can achieve liberation, being freed from the cycle of birth and death. So let us now try to dwell with wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. So one is called of field. So this is the chapter understanding of but confusion Krishna called. So even the Gita, the first chapter starts with Arjuna's confusion and Arjuna's lamentation, but because that Vishad, that confusion, it leads to Arjuna surrendering to Krishna. So that confusion is also great. So That's why the term yoga is used. Yoga means Arjuna's difficulty has led him to, has created an opportunity for him to surrender and hear the wisdom of Gita. So all of us in life, we all go through our own crisis, our own confusions, and that's why we need the wisdom of the Gita. So Arjuna specifically chose Arjuna. He put Arjuna in the situation of confusion and bewilderment so that we all can connect to the personality and the situation of Arjuna. And in our own lives, when we are facing our own little battlefield of Kurukshetra, our own little wars in life, when we regularly hear the wisdom of Gita, we will get a lot of clarity. So this first chapter is called, Srila Prabhupada translates it as observing the armies on the battlefield. So Arjuna is trying to observe with his own eyes, with his own understanding, the armies on the battlefield. And he's trying to come up with a conclusion. So text one. So of this shloka along with me.
See, it's always to hear.
Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavah mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavah mamaka pandavaschaiva kim. Dhritarashtra dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavah mamaka pandavaschaiva kimma kurvata sanjaya. So the translation is, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So the first verse starts with Dhritarashtra speaking. And what is Dhritarashtra's question? Dhritarashtra's question is, after my sons, Mamaka, Pandavaschaiva, after my sons, that is Duryodhana and company, and the sons of the Pandu, Yudhishthir and company, they both met in Kurukshetra, on this battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is also a Dharma Kshetra. Kim Akurvata Sanjaya, what did they do? So even though this shloka appears to be a very innocent question that Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya, his secretary, but this question shows a lot of cunningness from the side of Dhritarashtra. So many times, when we question, when we ask something, there is the content of that question, and then there is an intent behind that question. So the content of Dhritarashtra's question appears to be very simple and innocent, but the intent of Dhritarashtra is very cunning. So we'll spend some time in understanding the mindset of Dhritarashtra. So it's important, especially the first few shlokas shows mindset of Dhritarashtra and his son Duryodhana, who are like the root of all evil, because of which the entire Kurukshetra war had to happen. So we'll spend some time understanding the history of the Mahabharata. So for those of y'all who know, it can be a recap for all of y'all. So we know that Ganga and Shantanu had got married, and Shantanu got attracted to this river Ganga, who's a beautiful goddess, and through both of them, they got Bhishma Dev. Bhishma was born to them. He was one of the 8 Vasus. So, but Shantanu, the life of Mahabharata, the entire Mahabharata is like a lot of tragedies in Mahabharata. So anyone who feels that life is live happy after really doesn't happen. It neither happens in Mahabharata nor it happens in Ramayana. Even in Ramayana, Lord Ram and Sita got married, but they didn't live happily ever after. There were a lot of struggles that they went through. Similarly, in Mahabharata, that goes on. This entire book is like so many tragedies, so many difficulties keep coming. So Shantanu and Ganga get married and Bhishma is born. But then Ganga had like a very peculiar vow. Ganga, even though she was the wife of Shantanu, she told Shantanu that every time a son is born, I will do anything with the son, but you should not question me. The day you question me, I will leave you and go. So what Ganga would do is, every time a son was born, she would take that son and drown it in a river. In that river Ganga, she would drown it. She was a personification of the river. She would drown it in the river. But finally, when Bhishma was born, so many children, Shantanu lost it in this way. Ganga would just go and drown it. And Shantanu wouldn't be able to question Ganga, because if you would question, she would leave and go. Finally, Bhishma was born. And when Bhishma was born, and she was about to drown Bhishma in the river, Shantanu told Ganga, nothing doing. I want the son with me. So Ganga said, okay, take Bhishma, I am leaving and going. So, Shantanu got Bhishma, but he didn't have a wife. He had a son, but he didn't have a wife. So then what would Shantanu do? So one day, Shantanu, when he was going out for a hunting excursion, he came across a very beautiful fisher woman called Satyavati. Even though she was born in a fisherman folk, but she was very beautiful, extremely beautiful. In fact, from her body, a very beautiful fragrance would come out. So, so Shantanu got very attracted to Satyavati, and he went to Satyavati's father and told Satyavati's father that I want to marry your daughter. So Satyavati's father said, okay, fine, but then I have a condition. The condition is that only the son of my daughter will be the king. But Shantanu couldn't agree, because Shantanu already had Bhishma as a son. So Bhishma comes to know that his father is going through a crisis. So Bhishma, the son, goes to Satyavati's father and tells Satyavati's father that let your daughter get married to my father. So this is the first time of his father. So Satyavati's father is impressed, and he tells Bhishma, okay, they can get married, but then you will not sit on the throne. So Bhishma takes a vow that I will never sit on the throne, so the son of Satyavati can sit on the throne. But then Satyavati's father says, fine, you may not sit on the throne, but your son will sit on the throne. So Bhishma said, I will never get married. Yeah. So finally, through Bhishma's intervention, Shantanu and Satyavati get married. And from them, they have a son called Chitrangada and a son called Vichitravirya. But then again, the tragedy in Mahabharata continues. The tragedy is that as soon as Chitrangada and Vichitravirya are born, Shantanu dies and goes. So only Satyavati is left, and Chitrangada, Vichitravirya are left, and Shantanu's eldest son, Bhishma, is left. So again, the tragedy is, they have to continue on, and Bhishma is like the eldest. The entire burden still lies on his shoulder. So Bhishma, and it also happens that Chitrangada also dies. There is another Gandharva of the name Chitrangada, and he comes and fights with this Chitrangada, and Chitrangada dies. So the only one who is left now is Vichitravirya. So Bhishma goes and gets 3 girls to get married to Vichitravirya: Amba, Ambalika, and Ambika. We all know the story that these 3 girls come. But then Amba is like very clear that she doesn't want to get married to Vichitravirya. And she tells Bhishma that let me get married to you. Bhishma doesn't agree to that. And we all know the story that Amba in future becomes Shikandi. But this story continues that Vichitravirya also dies now without having a son. And this is where Parashar has another son through Satyavati, before Satyavati's marriage to Shantanu, called Vyasdev. And through Vyasdev and Ambalika, the first son is born called and there is another son that is born to Vyasdev through a maid servant called Vidura. So what the story is the connection between what I'm trying to tell you all and the verse of the Gita is that Dhritarashtra is supposed to be the first son of the Kuru dynasty, the eldest one who's supposed to sit on the throne. But then, due to his own karma, due to the fate, the will of God, Dhritarashtra is born blind. So how can a blind person rule a kingdom? So even though Dhritarashtra is the eldest, he doesn't get the kingdom, and the throne goes to the next youngest child, that is Pandu. So since that day itself, Dhritarashtra becomes filled with envy for Pandu. And somehow the story goes ahead that Pandu also dies and the Pandavas remain. So Dhritarashtra is only a temporary king for the time being till Pandu's children Yudhishthir becomes senior enough to sit on the throne. But then because Dhritarashtra is used to sitting on the throne for such a long time, he gets attached to it and he feels that his son should rule and not the children of Yudhishthir. So this is where the entire war of the Mahabharata begins. Where does it begin? Mamaka Pandavaschaiva. So Dhritarashtra distinguishes my sons and the sons of Pandu. Dhritarashtra can't understand Pandu is dead now. His children, the Pandavas, are also my children. He couldn't see all of them as his children. He saw very clearly my sons, Duryodhana and company, and the sons of Pandu. So the cause of all problems in this world is I and mine. As long as we make this distinguishing thing factor that all these things and these people are my people and these people are not my people, then we become very selfish and conflicts are inevitable. So when we see everyone as one family, ultimately everyone is the children of God. We are all from one family. But then when we start distinguishing and we make these favorites, then there is a lot of issues that come in life. Yeah, so Vidura is born to Vyasdev. So the story continues ahead. So Dhritarashtra and Gandhari are married. Again, Bhishma goes and gets Gandhari to get married to Dhritarashtra. And Pandu is married to Kunti and Madri. So we all know the story that 100 sons are born to Duryodhan, and from Kunti 3 children are born, and from Madri 2, Nakul and Sahadev. In this way, the entire Kuru dynasty is formed. So in the entire Kuru dynasty, even though Bhishma is trying to avoid so many tragedies in life, but then there are so many tragedies that keep happening, and the inevitable war finally happens. Even though Bhishma tried his best to avoid the war, Vidura tried his best to avoid the war, Krishna tried his best to avoid the war, finally the war is inevitable, and both these parties, the 100 sons of Duryodhan and the 5 sons of Pandu, are face to face with each other in this inevitable war. Yeah. So this is the story of this blind king Dhritarashtra. Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam, he explains when he's mentioning about, in the Bhagavatam, this chapter comes where Dhritarashtra finally retires from his kingdom after the entire war is over. So Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, explains there that being blind physically is a defect. You can't do much about it. But then being blind spiritually and ethically is wrong. So Dhritarashtra was blind physically, that's okay. But the main issue with Dhritarashtra was he was blind spiritually also and ethically and morally also. That is dangerous. See, we all go through our own crisis in life. We all go through injustice in some way or the other. We may feel that things are unfair with us. People are not treating us well. But then we should not, when we go through suffering, we don't have a right to inflict suffering upon others. So Dhritarashtra, because he was always feeling that, no, I should have got the throne, I didn't get the throne. So he started to become mean and started to inflict pain upon the young Pandavas. So there are many, many people in this world who are born blind, correct? There are so many people who are born blind. But it doesn't mean that life is over just because you're born blind. Even blind people can do miracles. Even blind people can become successful in life when they don't focus on their weakness, on their blindness, but they focus on something that they have positive in life. Dhritarashtra, even though he was blind physically, he couldn't see, but Dhritarashtra had the power. He was blessed with the power of 10,000 elephants. He was still the most respected personality uh, in Hastinapur. So similarly, all of us may have a defect in life. All of us may have certain things missing in life, isn't it? Who has a life that is perfect? For Dhritarashtra, his eyes was missing. For many people, it is something else. Everyone has something missing in life. But what we need to understand is we can't continuously keep focusing on what is missing. We need to focus on the possibility of what we can do in spite of the defects that we have. So this is Ray Charles, a blind musician. Even though he was blind, he created some of the most beautiful set of music. This is Charlie Boswell. Even though he was blind, he was a gifted golfer, a golf player, even though blind. This is Erset Armagan. Even though he was blind, he was a beautiful painter. So somehow he had the sixth sense, God gifted him with something. So the difference between these people and that of Dhritarashtra is Dhritarashtra kept focusing on his blindness so much that he lost sight of opportunities that are there in front of him. So just like there is an English saying, if you cry too much and you keep focusing on your tears, then what will happen? Your vision will become blurred and you will not be able to see even if a door is open in front of you, even if there is an opportunity in front of you. So for us to focus on positivity and opportunity, we need to shift ourselves from what is missing in life. So, and we have Surdas. Surdas also a blind devotee. We have Bilva Mangal Thakur, who was a blind devotee. Right? If you go to Vrindavan, there is a place in Vrindavan called Barsana, where there is a devotee who was actually blind, but then Krishna gave him the vision to see his dance and drew a beautiful painting even though he was blind. So all these people were blessed in spite of their blindness. So the first lesson is one's ambition should not affect oneself and others negatively. There's nothing wrong in being ambitious. We all can be ambitious. That's perfectly okay. Dhritarashtra wanted to be ambitious, perfectly okay. But not by making oneself negative and others negative. You can't be ambitious at the cost of others. But in today's world, everyone's ambition, everyone wants to be successful at the cost of others. So you don't become successful at the cost of others. And because Dhritarashtra wanted only he and his children to be successful, and he wanted the Pandavas to fail, what was the result? The result was he and his children failed miserably. So this is a very important lesson. So when our ambition is just married to ourselves, when our ambition makes us very selfish, we become failures. But when we include others also in our ambition, in our success, we actually become all the more successful. So one time in America, there was one farmer who got the award for the best maize crop, makkah, the best corn crop. So the reporters asked him, how did you get the best corn crop? He said, I shared the best seeds with all my neighbors. All the adjoining neighbors who had farms, I shared the seeds with all of them. So, so the reporter asked him, if you shared your best seed with all of them, how was your crop the best? So he said that in corn farming, what happens is there is cross-pollination that happens. There is a lot of cross-pollination. So if you share your seeds with others, then when the bees come and cross-pollinate, you also get your best crop. If I don't share the best seeds with others, then my crop will get affected. So what is the lesson? The lesson is, the more we try to help others, even if not help others, the more we try at least not to damage others, we ourselves will be safe. Just like if you have a boat, no? Boat. There was this picture I had seen one time. Two people sitting on two ends of the boat, and there was a hole in one end of the boat. And this guy sitting on this end of the boat is trying to remove water and throw out. And the other fellow sitting on the other end, he's thinking that's his. But he doesn't understand, this fellow doesn't understand that both of them are sitting on the same boat. If water enters one side, not only that fellow will die, you will also die. So Dhritarashtra, because he had such a narrow mindset, eye and mind, there was so much envy and negativity in him. The result was that all his ambition failed miserably. He wanted to do something great for his children. He wanted to give them great power and great respect, and he wanted to make them the kings. But the result is they all lost all their lives just because of one man's ambition. So that's why there is this saying in English, there is enough in this world for everyone's need, but there is not enough in this world even for one man's greed. So for everyone's need, God has given sufficient in this world. But there is, even if there is one person who is greedy, his needs can never be met, because the ambitions of a greedy person can never be fulfilled. That's lesson one, right? So we also know that the Mahabharata continues that even though Dhritarashtra knew of all the wrong things that his sons were doing, Dhritarashtra didn't stop them. Why? Because he was feeling, let them help their own. Why should do anything? This mind so dumb. Correct. And how can he correct when he himself is wrong? So we may blame Duryodhan for this war, but the bigger culprit than Duryodhan is his father Dhritarashtra. The Mahabharata explains that if Duryodhan is the root of the trunk of sin, if he was the trunk of this tree of sin, Dhritarashtra is the root of it. He is the root of the tree of adharma and sin. Why? Because he didn't correct Duryodhan when he's supposed to be corrected. So silence is not right. When you see something going wrong, you have to open your mouth and speak the truth. If you just remain mum and silent, then you also become participant to the crime. So once there was a criminal who was announced, was pronounced the judgment, the judge pronounced the judgment that you are supposed to be hanged, because this guy started to, do dacoit, and he started to get into murder and so many things, and finally he was supposed to be hanged. So before he was hanged, the police, asked him, do you have any final wish, desire of yours? So this guy said, yes, I want to see my aunt. So when his aunt came in front of him, this fellow bit the ear of the aunt, removed the ear off. Why? Because this aunt had raised this boy, and in his childhood, this boy would do little crimes. He would steal some small money, he would steal some small things, and the aunt didn't correct him when he was a small child. And as he kept growing, his crimes kept increasing more and more, and his aunt didn't stop him. And finally, the result of all this is he's now going to be hanged. Definitely, it's his fault, but it is also the fault of his aunt, who didn't correct him when he was initially getting into the wrong direction. So when you stop a sin, like a plane, if it goes off the track initially, you can correct it. The further it goes off, it's more difficult to get it back on track. So similarly in life, when we see, especially even as parents, when we see our children going in the wrong direction, it's very important that we give timely feedbacks, timely corrections, because that is the duty of elders to correct the children if they're going in a wrong direction. Because ultimately, the responsibility will come on the parents. So Dhritarashtra knew very well that Duryodhana and company, they are getting into the wrong direction. But Dhritarashtra chose to remain silent. He was blind. Now all the more he chose to remain silent. And the result of it was the war. And the conclusion of the war is he's going to see the death of all his children. So we will stop here for today. We will continue this the next time.